Back in high school, I remember sitting in math class and I could see what the teacher was writing on the board. I could hear what was being said, but for some reason, I could not understand a word. Like literally nothing registered in my head. I was completely zoned out as if I was this deer seeing headlights. My attention span used to be horrible, and because of this, many areas of my life were broken. I had poor grades, I was addicted to a bunch of shit, and even my closest friends and family thought that I wouldn't amount to much in life. So for the last 5 years, I have been on a mission to flip my life around. I've read hundreds of self-help books. I've watched podcasts on neurology, psychology, and studied the minds of those who have been very successful themselves. I've tried various different diets, various different supplements, various different tools and protocols, you name it. In this video, I'm going to convert those 5 years of research into actionable protocols that had the most impact on my focus. So much so that I went from someone who failed multiple subjects in high school to someone who has now worked as a software engineer in Fortune 500 companies like Dell Technologies, AMD, Synopsys. And I was the best performing student in both my bachelor's and my master's program. I went from someone who could barely sit and focus for 15 minutes to someone who could now perform 4 to 5 hours of deep focused work. So I hope that my personal transformation lends some credibility to what I'm about to say next. However, this is not going to be one of those quick 5-minute fixes. If you're looking for a quick solution to this problem, then perhaps this is another video for you. So let's get right into it. Imagine me in 2017. I just come back from like a pretty rough day at university, and the first thing I did was order fast food via this app that had 500 plus restaurants in it. You could just order it and it would show up right to your door, like no social interactions needed. Anytime I felt bored, anxious, depressed, lonely, any sort of negative emotion in my life, that was my coping mechanism: fast food. You see, back then I thought that this behavior of mine wasn't that bad because all I thought that fast food really does is kind of make you fat. You gain a few extra pounds, right? This is generally what your parents tell you, and this is what you generally see people worrying about. Oh, I'm getting fat, I'm gonna avoid sweets. I didn't see this as too much of a big deal because I used to be a skinny teenager, and I was like, okay, I get to put on weight and I get to enjoy this highly stimulating food. That sounds like a really good deal, right? I could not have been more wrong about this. After years of consuming fast food, I realized that not only do you get fat, but it literally shortens your attention span. It destroys your motivation levels. It lowers your mood. You feel more depressed. You feel more anxious. And you stop enjoying productive things in life. Like, no one told me this, that the true dangers of fast food is not the fat that you put on. It's actually the brain rot. Have you ever had this feeling where you had like a large meal, probably consuming a lot of carbs, fast food, processed stuff, and once you consume it, you just felt like kind of drowsy. You didn't feel like doing much? This is exactly how I felt for years after consuming fast food. Pretty much drowsy, unproductive, tired. And then I used to procrastinate all the productive things in my life that required effort and focus because I was just so dead from consuming all of that stuff. Not only did I avoid what was productive, I actually indulged in more quick pleasures. Like, I remember after consuming a large meal, I would lie on the couch, dim the lights, and watch Netflix, binge watch shows. And this was the most depressing period of my life. For a long time, I really did not believe the amount of impact that fast food had on my attention span and focus levels. I always thought to myself, how is it that what I eat, what goes in my belly, impacts what goes in my head? The connection did not make any sense to the teenage me back then. It's only once I started researching that I find that your gut actually communicates with your brain. You almost have like a mini brain in your gut, which communicates with your actual brain. And if your gut health is poor due to consuming fast food, that is going to impact your brain. You're going to be depressed, anxious, lack motivation, have a short attention span. All these are directly due to the food that you are consuming. For example, take McDonald's French fries. It has 19 ingredients in it. 19. I know 2 of them, salt and potato. What are the other 17 ingredients? They're actually preservatives and other hidden sugars and all these things which bombard your brain with stimulation and actually destroy your gut health. Go to your local store and pick out any candy bar, even those candy bars which claim that they are healthy, these protein bars. Just check out and read the label, read the ingredients. You're going to see that it's a science fiction novel. 10 plus ingredients. These are not natural stuff at all. It didn't grow from nature. It wasn't some animal running around. This was actually designed in a factory by some food scientists who try to make it as stimulating and as addictive as possible. And this comes at the expense of your gut health and your brain health. Another thing that happens when you consume this processed garbage is that your brain becomes inflamed, literally becomes swollen. So back when I was a teenager, I always remember having brain fog, like my brain felt heavy and I could not focus and I was just walking around like a zombie because my body was just too busy dealing with the garbage that I was feeding it. If you enjoy such information-based content rather than pointless entertainment, then make sure that you subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be making a lot more of these. So after a couple of years of eating fast food, I was convinced that my deteriorating mental health, my deteriorating focus was all due to the garbage food that I was eating. Naturally, what I decided to do was try and quit fast food. I went around 2 or 3 days eating all healthy food, but then some stressful event would show up, or I would get bored, or some negative emotion would hit me, and I would just go right back to consuming fast food and sedating myself and numbing myself. And this cycle repeated itself for years. That's because when you eat this processed garbage fast food, it has a lot of hidden sugars in it, and your brain releases a lot of this neurochemical called dopamine. This is the chemical that's associated with pleasure, with motivation, with happiness, and over time you get used to this stimulation. And your brain knows that whenever you're feeling down, low, depressed, you can always use this temporary dopamine hit to get yourself back on. So it makes you crave it. Like, I literally remember feeling like there were ants crawling through my screen or these sugar cravings back when I was like trying to quit fast food. So I was having a very, very rough time breaking this emotional bond that I had built with fast food. That is until I discovered fasting. I know this sounds very counterintuitive, but just hear me out. I started doing fasts that were 16 to 18 hours long. So during these 16 to 18 hours, I would not consume any food. I'm not gonna lie, the first 2-3 days were kind of rough because your body is adapting to new sources of energy. But from day 4 onwards, a lot of cool stuff started happening. The first cool thing that started happening was that my cravings for fast food reduced by 90%. So literally all those withdrawal symptoms, they got reduced in intensity by 90% and they became so manageable. It's as though those regions of my brain that were like demanding that dopamine, it's like they got switched off. Secondly, my attention span increased significantly. Fasting has these anti-inflammatory properties, and I remember when I was fasting that all that brain fog, that swelling, that brain inflammation, it completely disappeared and I was no longer this zombie. Thirdly, my mood became a lot better and I was a lot more motivated. I actually once again started enjoying the activities that I'd procrastinated for so long. Enjoyed studying, enjoyed learning, enjoyed reading. And once you begin to enjoy things, you naturally tend to focus on them better. The next benefit is kind of an interesting one. I remember watching this podcast by Dr. Andrew Huberman, and in this podcast he described that there is this region of your brain which is responsible for generating willpower. And you can actually grow this region of the brain by doing things that you don't really want to do, or by not doing things that you really want to do. And I thought to myself that, whoa, the best way to grow this region of this brain could be as simple as doing fasting. Because in fasting, you're literally restricting yourself from something as fundamental as food. You are literally stopping yourself from consuming food. And I was doing this for 16 hours a day for multiple days. And I feel by doing this, that region of my brain that's responsible for willpower, it grew significantly and I had a lot more willpower to say no to junk food, to say no to instant gratification, and to focus on the things that I really wanted to focus, to say no to the distracting thoughts. The last benefit I felt because of fasting is something that I don't hear many people talk about. It's that my sleep became a lot better. Like when I was consuming fast food, processed food, and I was not fasting, I used to have a tough time falling asleep. Like I would lie down and I would toss and turn for 2 hours, look at the ceiling, check my phone, and it's only then that I would fall asleep. And then I would wake up the next day feeling tired and sleep deprived. But ever since I started doing these 16 to 18 hour fast, I slept like a baby. So within 10 to 15 minutes of hitting the bed, zoop, I was in deep sleep. I used to wake up far more refreshed. Also, my overall sleep requirements reduced. Back then when I wasn't fasting and I was consuming processed shit, I used to require 9 hours of sleep. And now with fasting and eating good, whole, natural food, I was now only required to sleep 7.5 hours. With this optimized recovery in sleep, my focus, my productivity, my motivation levels, all these things improved. After having a good clean diet and fasting for 30 days, my attention span went from just 20 minutes to 4 hours a day. I was no longer this irresponsible, confused zombie filled with brain fog. I was now someone who was actually very sharp and cognitively aware of what was happening around him and knew exactly what needed to be done and how to respond. It's as though I matured by 5 years. Even though the solution is simple, it's not easy to implement. If you're someone who has never fasted before, you need to know what to eat before a fast. You You need to know how to actually break a fast. You need to know when to do shorter fasts. You need to know when to do longer fasts. And most importantly, you need to know how not to feel hungry during a fast. So if you would like to work with me and actually bridge this knowledge gap really quickly and also learn about other protocols that go hand in hand with fasting that can give you an elite level of attention span, then make sure that you click on the link in the description and book a one-on-one call with me.